Listen, look, it has been another frantic week. A new and terrible healthcare bill was pushed in the Senate. The president called Kim Jong-un Rocket Man at the UN. There was significant development in Robert Mueller's Russia investigation. And then this weekend, all hell broke loose.
The president now picking a fight with professional athletes, taking aim at players like Colin Kaepernick, who protested the treatment of blacks by police by taking a knee during the national anthem.
Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a bitch off the field right now, out, he's fired. He's fired!
OK, putting aside the free speech implications there, how is kneeling in front of a flag more disrespectful to it than grinding it against your gnarled old boner? But I'm afraid it is true. The President of the United States took time out while, it is worth noting, over 3 million American citizens in Puerto Rico are without power, to call Colin Kaepernick a son of a bitch. Kaepernick's own mother, incidentally, magnificently responding, "Guess that makes me a proud bitch." And that was one of many eye-catching responses to Trump, including Bill's running back LaShawn McCoy tweeting, "It's really sad, man, ... Our president is an arsehole." Meanwhile, many more players took a knee this afternoon, and even NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell denounced the president's comments. And when you have lost the moral high ground to Roger fucking Goodell, something is horribly wrong. Which is not to say that Trump did not have his supporters on this issue, and none were more vigorous than Fox News' Jeanine Pirro, who delivered a characteristically calm and measured address to those kneeling football players.
America's been incredibly good to every one of you. From the time you displayed talent in sports as a youth, America's allowed you to shine and become financially prosperous. There are so many of you who make tens of millions of dollars. Shame on you. Shame on all of you.
Wow. But you know what? She is right. No one wants to hear about politics from a wildly successful athlete. You only want to hear about them from an abject failure of a prosecutor who somehow let Robert Durst slip through her fingers. And by the way, Jeanine, there's a flag behind you. Have some fucking respect. But let's move on for now, because I would like to briefly focus on a pair of scandals concerning Trump administration officials and their use of planes. And let's start with Tom Price, who had emerged this week, had reportedly taken at least 24 private plane trips since he became health secretary, which by one estimate has cost taxpayers more than $400,000. And look, an occasional private jet flight may be necessary for government officials, but for many of these flights, including one to Philadelphia, it turns out far less costly alternatives were available, as CNN's graphics department creatively showed.
There was a commercial flight departing just minutes earlier. That commercial flight would have cost between $500 and $700. And of course, there was also the option of Amtrak. A train from Washington to Philadelphia, even in first class, would have cost taxpayers no more than a few $100s round trip. The same trip by car would have cost an estimated $18 in gasoline each way for an SUV.
Oh, it gets worse, CNN. Price could have taken a Greyhound bus for either $10 or a hand job, or he could have just razor-scooted himself there instead, or even maybe fired himself out of a cannon and saved us all a lot of money. And yet, according to Politico, he may have paid $25,000 for that trip, which is disgraceful. I mean, it is not as disgraceful as this actual mustache that he used to have, but still absolutely unforgivable. I mean, look at it. It's like his upper lip is being haunted by the mustache of a 17th century sex offender. But for sheer brazenness here, Price has to take a fully reclinable backseat to Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, a man whose appearance provides us with an answer to the question, what if income inequality dressed up as me, John Oliver, for Halloween? Now, that's mean. You probably recall, to both of us, you may recall that last month, Mnuchin's wife, Louise Linton, seen here on her wedding day, silently reminding herself over and over again that this is exactly what she wanted, stepped into a bit of trouble when she accompanied her husband on a trip to Kentucky.
It all started when Louise Linton posted a picture of herself yesterday getting off a government plane, mentioning designer labels from her outfit, including Hermes and Tom Ford. An Oregon woman responded, "Glad we could pay for your little getaway. #deplorable." Linton fired back, Pretty sure the amount we sacrifice per year is a lot more than you'd be willing to sacrifice, and you're adorably out of touch.
Now, it's a little ironic that Linton, who actually tagged her photo #Valentino Rockstud Heels, is calling someone else out of touch, because Rockstud Heels? Really, Louise? What is this, Valentino's fall 2010 ready-to-wear show? Is there some asymmetrical pastel organza you'd like to pair them with? Maybe something floaty with a scalloped hem? Or is it 7 years ago, only from the ankle down? I'm just saying, if you've never seen Valentino Rockstud Heels, first, congratulations. But if you're curious, just Google image a stylist phones it in for a CW Star's red carpet appearance at the People's Choice Awards and you will find them. But the strangest part of Linton's response came when she wrote, "Do you think the US government paid for our honeymoon or personal travel? LOLOL." To which the answer is, I hadn't actually considered that, but now that you've brought it up, yes, almost definitely. And guess what we found out just last week?
Multi-millionaire Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin formally requested that he and his new wife Louise, regularly seen in designer clothes with purses at $10,000 plus, be allowed to travel in style in a government jet on their honeymoon to Europe.
It's true. A man worth an estimated $300 million asked to use a government jet for his European honeymoon, and the request was later withdrawn, which is good, because that would have been a breathtaking waste of money. And that is really saying something for Mnuchin, considering that he invested in Collateral Beauty, a movie that was, and not a lot of people know this, a movie. But meanwhile, Mnuchin is still facing questions over whether he and his wife arranged that trip to Kentucky because it happened to be the perfect spot from which to view the solar eclipse. And last week, Mnuchin fiercely denied that and casually insulted the entire state of Kentucky in the process.
You know, people in Kentucky took this stuff very seriously. Being a New Yorker in California, I was like, the eclipse. So we got there, I was like, really, I don't have any interest in watching the eclipse.
What are you talking about? It's a fucking eclipse, not a Broadway show. I live in Manhattan, so I see eclipses all the time. I'll leave work a little early, grab a little pre-eclipse dinner at Joe Allen, and then go. I don't have time to go to Kentucky to see some touring company eclipse. And look, I know Mnuchin and Price's scandals are not the biggest in the world. For this administration, they're almost nostalgically quaint. But to quote America's loudest legal mind, America has been incredibly good to them. It's allowed them to shine and become financially prosperous, and they've made $1 million. They have disgraced the American taxpayer, so shame on you! Shame on both of you! And now, this.
And now, a preview of Megyn Kelly's new morning show.
In a world and a country that is incredibly divided right now, my hope is that this show can be a unifying force.
And now a look at the unifying force that is Megyn Kelly.
Gay rights are more and more protected and recognized in this country. Christian beliefs and Christian rights, not so much.
This is about the attempted war on the religious right, not the war on women.
And by the way, for all you kids watching at home, Santa just is white. Jesus was a white man, too. The decision to drop the now infamous voter intimidation case against members of the New Black Panther Party. New Black Panther Party. The New Black Panther case. New Black Panther Party. The New Black Panther Party out there saying we gotta go kill some cracker babies. Kill some cracker babies. Do you hate white people? Is President Obama playing the race card? And now people have made this into a race thing. Do black lives matter or do all lives matter? You want to take a shot at that? Last night's Democratic debate found 5 presidential contenders suggesting black lives may have more value than all lives. Are these just thugs? I'm thinking thugs is not far off the mark. Thug behavior, the thug mentality, and that's a controversial term, but you know that it's cool to sort of hate the cops and hang out and, you know, be somebody who doesn't necessarily prize being there for your family. Illegals, late-term abortions, voter fraud, the left-wing press, death panels, war on Christmas, Benghazi. Look at that moron. What an idiot. Cupcake Nation alert. A culture of victimization in this country. If you watch those VMAs, I mean, you really have to wonder if in 25 years the new standard is they're just going to be openly having sexual intercourse on the stage. Why can't it be a day where we take a moment and we stop and we acknowledge the role that God has played in the formation of this country?
You get on TV every night and state what you believe to.
No, I don't.
You don't?
No.
Well, I do. I state what I
know, because you're an opinion guy. I'm a journalist.
Moving on. Tonight, I would like to talk to you about business. The thing that everyone on Shark Tank thinks they have a great idea for, even this guy.
Our cakes are made of foam. And they're rentals.
Wait, so I can neither have my cake nor eat it too? I am in. Here is $1 million. Small start-up businesses like that hold a special place in America's heart, and politicians from across the political spectrum love to talk about how important they are.
Small business is the backbone of the American economy.
Small businesses are the backbone of this nation's economy.
Small businesses are the backbone of our economy.
Small businesses are the backbone of small businesses are the backbone of our economy. Small businesses are the backbone of our economy. Small businesses are the backbone of our economy.
It's true. Small businesses are the backbone of our economy. Is that rare thing that every politician agrees on. It's that, support the troops, Ted Cruz can go fuck himself, and South Dakota Senator John Thune can get it. He can get it. Now, look, it can feel like we're in a golden age of small business startups, but that isn't actually the case. The rate at which new businesses are being created has actually been steadily falling since the 1970s. And I would argue that one of the reasons for that is that big businesses have been getting even bigger, which brings us to our main topic tonight, corporate consolidation. Recent years have seen record highs for mergers and acquisitions, as you would know if you've ever watched the thrilled reactions they get on business news.
M&A has been hot, continues to be hot.
An exciting year for M&A.
A few blockbuster deals being announced. They call it Merger Monday on Wall Street.
It is shaping up to be another Merger Monday.
They don't call it Merger Monday for nothing.
Media mega Merger Monday.
Merger Monday? At last we have one, and I say...
OK, that is obviously a little nauseating, but also pressing a button on TV is a little bit dangerous because someone could take that footage and then loop any sound that they want under there. Now, obviously, I am not immature enough to do that, but if I were, it would look like this.
Merger Monday? At last we have one, and I say...
The point is, all this merger activity has helped make some sectors of our economy ridiculously consolidated.
The United States has gone from having 10 large airlines back in 2000 to just 4 today. And those 4 mega airlines now dominate more than 80% of the U.S. market.
Yeah, we're down to just 4 major airline choices. And no, that does not include JetBlue, because that is not actually an airline. It's just a very expensive way to eat those weird blue chips, which are, and this is true, just sliced Grover arms. Look, and airlines here are just the beginning. The rental car business is now 90% dominated by just 3 companies. The US beer industry is 70% controlled by just 2 companies. And online search engines are, of course, as we all know, dominated by 1 major player. That's right, say it with me, Bing. That's right, Bing, the best way to Google something. In fact, look, full disclosure here, even our own parent company, Time Warner, is currently trying to merge with AT&T, which makes this story a little dangerous for us to do. Although, you know, that is presuming that AT&T executives managed to get their shitty service working long enough to see it. AT&T, it's the top telecom company around, alphabetically, and nothing else. Look, even some brands that you might think of as indie now have multinational owners. Burt's Bees? It's not run by a backwards bee-fucker called Bert. It's run by Clorox. Tom's of Maine, the deodorant which did so little to deodorize your freshman year roommate. That's now owned by Colgate-Palmolive. And then there is Goose Island. Now, their ads feature beardy brewers rubbing hops on their faces. But what they don't mention is that Goose Island is owned by Anheuser-Busch, and that farm that you just saw is located at 822 Budweiser Loop. It's presumably just past Bud Light's Lime-A-Rita Boulevard. Basically, if you see the mass grave of Clydesdale horses, turn left and you're there. And it says something about the rapid rate of mergers that even Jim Cramer occasionally finds himself in disbelief at one happening. Watch him react to a mega merger in the aluminum can industry.
Ball Corp's acquisition of Rexam is taking the number of competitors in this space down to, get this, from 3 to 2. How did they let that happen?
Yeah. It's not great when a business casual Louis C.K. with a sound effects board is saying, holy shit, this was a really bad idea. But how did they let that happen is actually a really good question, and the answer is interesting, because we have had antitrust laws on the books for more than a century. And I'm not saying that every single merger is bad. You know, sometimes businesses getting bigger can lead to greater efficiencies and improvements. The tension is between allowing that and preventing them from doing real harm. So it's a balance. But since the late 1970s, that balance has tipped decidedly in favour of being merger-friendly, which has led to real problems. And let's start with the obvious. For workers, mergers can often mean big layoffs. But it's not just employees that can suffer, consumers can too, as Jim Cramer explained in that aluminum can segment in an inexplicably sarcastic tone of voice.
I always say competition, while great for you, a consumer, is an anathema to profits. Sometimes a business will be a total monopoly with no competition whatsoever. And while that's the ideal, it's very rare to see a genuine monopoly because, of course, it's against the law. Which brings us to the next best thing, an oligopoly, where a handful of companies control an entire industry, coexisting peacefully without much in the way of price competition.
That's a weird tone to use to describe something that's clearly awful. It's rare to see genuine bestiality because, of course, it's against the law. Which brings us to the next best thing, having sex with a stuffed animal while looking at pictures of a real horse. And for a sense of what it can look like when a handful of companies coexist peacefully without much in the way of price competition, just look at airlines. In 2012, one airline executive told an industry conference, consolidation has allowed us to do things like ancillary revenues, which is jargon for all those fees that drive you fucking crazy. Now, American was the first major airline to charge you for your first checked bag back in 2008. And back then, people could not believe it.
American Airlines will soon charge $15 for the first checked bag. That's on top of a fee of $25 for your second one.
$15? Holy cow. I'll have to put my underwear in my pockets.
Yes, first, that is clearly a delightful man. Although it does make you wonder whether he fills his bags full of underwear and nothing else. But within months, most major airlines had followed American's lead, and it was essentially the industry standard. And it is easy for that to happen when there's only a handful of big players. In fact, since then, they've added and increased bag fees multiple times, often moving in tandem, which is how those fees have gone from generating around $540 million a year a decade ago to $4.2 billion now. And that is infuriating. After all, if I wanted exorbitant fees that keep getting raised all the time despite shitty service, I'd become a customer of AT&T. Yeah. Fuck you, AT&T. Even if you take over, you'll never be my real dad. And look, you may well be angry with the service you get from airlines, but thanks to consolidation, they don't really need to give a shit about what you think. And if you don't believe me, remember that awful video that went around earlier this year?
The shocking images of a passenger caught in a travel nightmare. A man visibly shaken as he's yanked and then dragged off a United jet by law enforcement, all after refusing to give up his seat.
Yeah, that is the most horrifying thing you can possibly see on an airplane, unless your in-flight movie is The Boss Baby. A movie that combines the unbearable smugness of Alec Baldwin with the unbearable smugness of a baby. Now, in the wake of that incident, people said it was a PR nightmare and there was talk on Twitter of boycotting United. The problem is, on certain routes, they're the only option. So a boycott is going to be pretty hard to pull off, and that is arguably why their CEO was later able to open his earnings call for that quarter by describing a period in which, I will remind you, a passenger had his teeth knocked out on one of United's planes like this.
Welcome to a terrific second quarter, strong financial results, and even more incredible operational results. And as we think about customers, I want to thank them for their continued loyalty and support. We continue to find new and better ways to service them and make them more comfortable on our airline.
And you know what? Is it really any wonder that their earnings stayed solid? United is sometimes the only way to get to where you are going, which actually explains their new slogan, you want to fucking rollerblade to Houston? Shut up and get in. And when an industry gets too consolidated, Any company trying to compete with them or survive in their supply chain can get crushed. Now, we all know about Amazon, Walmart or Google, but there are less obvious examples of this too. Take eyewear. Now, if you go into a Lens Crafters, you will see frames by brands like Prada, Dolce & Gabbana, Burberry and Ralph Lauren, all of which, it turns out, are made by an Italian company called Luxottica, which incidentally also owns Lens Crafters and Sunglass Hut and Pearl Vision, and runs Target Optical and Sears Optical. So what can happen when a smaller company goes up against them? Well, just ask Oakley.
Oakley was a big competitor, and they had a fight with Luxottica, and Luxottica basically said, we're dropping you from our stores. And Oakley...
They refused to sell their glasses?
Yeah, it was a dispute about pricing, and they dropped Oakley from the stores, and Oakley's stock price collapsed.
There were some issues between the two companies in the beginning of the 2000s, but both of them understood that it was better to go along. We merged with Oakley in 2007.
You bought
so we're
Oakley.
talking...
They tried to compete, and they lost, and then you bought them.
I understand your theory, but they understood that life was better together.
Ooh. That is the menacing tone of a Bond villain. They understood life was better together, Mr. Bond, no? That is the first time that I have ever felt sorry for Oakley, the official sunglasses of guys who unironically use the term finger blasting. And I think it's a sponsorship deal. And there is one more victim of consolidation that you may not think about, and that is the products themselves. Because heavily consolidated industries can lose the incentive to innovate, and the best example of this may be the cable box beneath your TV. If you have one of those, you probably hate it, because it's huge, it's glitchy, and it may be one of the largest energy-consuming items in your house, even when it's turned off. But if you think about it, cable companies have no real incentive to improve them. They're essentially regional monopolies. And again, they know that you basically have nowhere else to go. And you can't even smash your cable box out of frustration because you are renting it, and they'll then charge you hundreds of dollars if you don't give it back, which is why we went to the trouble of blowing this one up for you. Please take a look. There you go. Pretty cathartic to watch, right? I hope that helps. Feel free to watch it again in slow motion. I want you to know that box suffered. The point here is, we seem to have forgotten how important antitrust is and are now all being forced to live with the consequences, because this issue affects almost everything you do. Angry at banks? Well, the industry is dominated by just these four. Frustrated with your health insurance provider? Odds are it's one of these. And if this whole story is infuriating you so much that you are yearning for the sweet escape of death, well, bad luck, because the casket industry is controlled by these three companies. Oh, and it gets even worse. The afterlife is actually controlled by one religion. I am not saying which one, but when you find out, you're going to be so mad. The point is, we have laws to prevent the worst effects of consolidation, and it may well be time to more aggressively use them, to impose stricter standards and to empower the FTC and the DOJ's antitrust divisions. And that is something that most people would really get behind, and nearly every politician should. After all, there is one thing they cannot stop saying.
Small business is the backbone of our economy.
Well, if they really believe that, it may be time for them to stop talking about backbones and actually fucking grow one. And now, this.
And now, all of Jim Cramer's sound buttons replaced with fart noises.
Hedge funds that are in trouble start selling, not because they want to, but because they have to raise money to pay back their unhappy clients. Things keep working out. Is it any wonder that Norfolk Southern and Union Pacific keep running? Buy high and then sell low. A time-honored way to lose money. Sell it tomorrow. Because the whole idea of saving for retirement puts you to sleep. But I want you to feel emboldened. Not as we tell you what we would do before we pull any trigger. I was wrong on both counts.
Moving on. Finally tonight, just a quick word regarding trains. Basically, buses that fuck. Now, you probably know that we recently became obsessed with WNEP Scranton's backyard train. It runs behind their weather forecast. We got so obsessed that on our last programme, we actually made them a ridiculously large train set and ended our show with this plea. Please, WNEP, call us to arrange pickup or delivery of the greatest backyard train that local news has ever seen. It's true, we built them an enormous train set and then demanded that they drive 2.5 hours to come and get it, which is basically the world's worst gift right after giving someone a plant. That is not a present, it is an assignment. And, you know, in classic Scranton style, viewers were split on the issue of the new train. Some, like this one, were positive.
You've got to go get that train, that beautiful train for the backyard that HBO made. Your little one, I can't even look at it now.
Oh, come on! There's no need to make this about how shitty, your words, the regular backyard train is. And you know what? To be fair, not everyone in Scranton liked ours either.
I wouldn't let some New York big shot come get that big fancy train. The heck's with them New York fellas there. What do they know about trains anyway?
You know what? That man does have a point. The subway here proves that New Yorkers know nothing about trains. Subway trains are basically just elongated dumpsters with seats that slowly roll through rat-infested sadness tunnels. But those angry callers actually got their wish, because sadly our train set will not be replacing their backyard train for the simple reason that it doesn't fit in their backyard. Which, to be completely honest, we kind of thought might be the case. We did think about the logistics, it's just that we decided it would be funnier to give them a really big train. It wasn't an accident, we're just terrible people. But the really good news here is that WNEP have donated our train set to Scranton's local Electric City Trolley Museum, or as it's known to the children of Scranton, every fucking year's class trip. And look, they went all out, even using, and this is true, a police escort to bring our train set through Scranton. Just to be clear about that, they took a train, loaded it into a truck, and then surrounded it with cars. So they weren't so much going to a transportation museum as becoming one. And on Friday, they celebrated the big unveiling.
Now that irresponsibly large train is on display in Scranton for all to see. John Oliver, the host of Last Week Tonight, could not make it to today's dedication, but we were honored with the presence of two of the show's characters. Mr. Nutter Butter himself and the Dancing Zebra were both on hand to take in part of today's festivities. It's true.
I couldn't make it to the event because I have to work all week to make this show, Stephen and Jimmy. But we did send our favourite naturally occurring barcode, the Bolivian zebra, and Mr. Nutterbutter, America's furriest co-defendant. But look, this whole train adventure has genuinely been a lot of fun, and I would like to sincerely thank the people of Scranton, because it turns out they found the perfect way to say thank you and also to get back at me.
Now, we have made some amendments to it since you saw it last year on Newswatch 16 at 5. John Oliver's face is now on it.
Well played, Scranton. Well played. There is simply no more passive-aggressive way to thank someone for a gift than by driving a train directly into their face. That is our show. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week. Good night.